The morning I lost the baby, Brother Caldwell called before the bleeding had stopped. I want you to hold that sentence for a moment before I continue. I was sitting on the bathroom floor of our house on Clearview Road. It was a Wednesday in November. The tiles were cold through my dress. Thomas was in the doorway, and my phone was ringing on the edge of the sink with Brother Caldwell's name on the screen. Thomas answered it. I listened to my husband tell an elder about my body while I was still on the floor. Stay with me. Subscribe before I go further. Not for me, for every woman who has ever lost something and then been called into a room to answer for it. Subscribe. And leave one word below if you have ever had your grief turned into a meeting agenda. My name is Hannah. I am 25 years old. I was baptized at 12, married at 17, and disfellowshipped 6 months ago from the Bethel Park North congregation in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I am speaking to you from a one-bedroom apartment where I sleep with the curtains open for the first time in my life. And I am going to tell you about the meeting that happened 11 days after I lost my daughter. I am going to tell you what Brother Caldwell asked me in that room. And I am going to tell you why, of everything that happened in my 7 years inside the truth, that meeting is the one I have never been able to put down. I was 11 weeks pregnant when it happened. We had not told the congregation yet. In our hall, you did not announce a pregnancy until you were past the first trimester. Not because of any written rule, but because of the unspoken understanding that early loss was a private matter between a wife, her husband, and Jehovah. I had known for 3 weeks. I had not told my mother. I had not told Sister Karen. I had held it quietly, the way you hold something fragile. Carefully, with both hands, trying not to breathe too hard in its direction. We had been trying for 2 years. I want you to understand what 2 years of trying means inside a JW marriage. It means 2 years of Brother Caldwell asking Thomas at elder check-ins whether Jehovah had blessed their household yet. It means 2 years of sisters at Sunday meetings touching my arm with that specific gentle pressure that meant they were praying for my womb. It means 2 years of reading Watchtower articles about the blessing of children and feeling somewhere in my chest a quiet failure I could not name. When the test came back positive, I sat on the edge of the bathtub, the same bathtub I had sat on the morning of my wedding in my white dress, and I held the test in both hands, and I felt something I had not felt in 2 years of marriage. I felt like I had finally done something right. It started on a Tuesday night, a feeling I could not place at first, a wrongness somewhere below language. By Wednesday morning, I knew. I will not describe what happened in detail, not because I am ashamed, because some things belong to the body and to no one else. What I will tell you is this. By Wednesday afternoon, I was on the bathroom floor. The tiles were cold through my dress. The light above the mirror was the particular gray of a November afternoon in Pittsburgh, when the sky cannot decide whether to snow. Thomas stood in the doorway. He did not know what to do with his hands. He was a 24-year-old man who had been taught to bring all difficult things to the elders. And this was the most difficult thing that had ever happened in our house. My phone rang on the edge of the sink, Brother Caldwell's name on the screen. Thomas answered it before I could speak. I heard him say, "Brother Caldwell, we have a situation." I heard him say, "Hannah has lost the pregnancy." I heard him say, "Yes, we will need guidance." I heard him say, "Of course, whatever you think is best." I sat on the cold tiles and I listened to my husband report my miscarriage to an elder while it was still happening. I need to tell you something before I go further. Something that took me years to understand. In the Jehovah's Witness organization, there is a doctrine around blood. You know the public version. JW members do not accept blood transfusions. This is taught from childhood as a core spiritual commitment, drawn from Acts 15:29 and from decades of Watchtower publications that have hardened a single verse into an absolute organizational policy. What most people outside the truth do not know is how that doctrine operates in practice during a medical emergency. A JW woman experiencing a pregnancy loss does not simply go to the hospital and receive care. She goes to the hospital accompanied by a Hospital Liaison Committee, a group of elders specifically trained by the organization to interface with medical staff and ensure that the patient does not accept blood products even under emergency conditions. This committee is not optional. The elders do not ask whether you want them there. They come because the organization requires them to come. Because in the eyes of the Watchtower, your spiritual compliance in a moment of physical crisis is more important than your ability to make medical decisions alone. Brother Caldwell was not calling to offer comfort. Brother Caldwell was calling to begin the process. We went to Allegheny General that evening. Thomas drove. I sat in the passenger seat of the gray Honda Civic and looked at the yellow lines on the road and felt a hollowness I did not have a word for. The kind of empty that is not absence but presence. The presence of something that was there this morning and is not there now. Brother Caldwell and Brother Reyes were already in the waiting room when we arrived. They were wearing their good meeting clothes. Brother Reyes had a folder. I will not tell you everything that happened in the hospital that night. That story belongs to a different video. What I will tell you is that 11 days later, on a Thursday evening at 7 o'clock, Thomas and I were asked to attend a meeting at the Bethel Park North Kingdom Hall to discuss matters pertaining to the medical situation and its spiritual implications. I ironed my good meeting clothes. I sat in the back seat of the gray Honda Civic while Thomas drove. I folded my hands in my lap the way I had been folding them since I was 6 years old. I told myself it was routine. The back room at Bethel Park North had 4 chairs, a folding table, a fluorescent light that hummed the specific pitch of every Kingdom Hall I had ever sat in. No windows. There was a box of Kleenex pre-placed on the table. There is always a box of Kleenex pre-placed on the table. Brother Caldwell sat at the center, Brother Reyes to his left, a third elder to his right, Brother Mast, who had been in our congregation for 30 years and who had a soft voice and the particular gravity of a man who had never been questioned by someone of lesser standing. They had folders. Brother Caldwell had a legal pad. He asked Thomas to wait outside. Then he looked at me and he began. He asked me first about the pregnancy, how far along I had been, whether I had experienced any warning signs I had not reported to Thomas or to the elders. I told him 11 weeks. I told him I had not known anything was wrong until it was. He wrote something on the legal pad. Then he asked me about the hospital. He asked whether the medical staff had discussed any procedures with me directly, without Thomas present. He asked whether I had been offered any treatment that involved blood products. I said the doctors had spoken to me briefly while Thomas was in the waiting room with the liaison team. He wrote something else. Then Brother Reyes leaned forward and asked me a question I was not prepared for. He asked whether in that brief conversation with the doctors, I had indicated any willingness to accept a blood transfusion if my condition had required one. I sat in that chair and I understood what I was being asked. I was not in that room because I had lost a baby. I was in that room because in the 15 minutes I had spent alone with a doctor in Allegheny General, someone had reported that I had asked questions. Not that I had accepted anything, not that I had done anything the organization would call a violation. That I had asked questions. I had asked the doctor what would happen if the bleeding did not stop on its own. That was all. I had asked a question about my own body in the middle of losing my daughter, and the hospital liaison team had documented it, and 11 days later, I was sitting in a windowless room at 7 o'clock on a Thursday evening being asked whether I had wavered. I want to stop here and tell you something I have never said in a video before. I did not cry in that room. I want to be very clear about that. I had been trained for 25 years to keep my face still in front of elders. I kept it still. I asked the doctor a question. I did not accept any treatment. My spiritual standing is intact. Brother Caldwell nodded. He wrote something down. Brother Mast said very gently, "Hannah, we understand this has been a difficult time. Jehovah sees your heart. We simply want to ensure that the grief of this experience has not caused you to question the organization's guidance on matters of blood." I said, "It has not." He said, "Good. Then let us pray together for Jehovah's comfort in this loss." They bowed their heads. I bowed my head. And I sat in that plastic chair 11 days after losing my daughter, and I prayed alongside the 3 men who had just interrogated my spiritual loyalty during the worst week of my life. I kept my face perfectly still. I had been trained for that too. I want to tell you something about Brother Caldwell that took me a long time to understand. He was not a cruel man. He was a 68-year-old elder who had been trained by the organization to treat a wife's medical decisions during a crisis as a matter of congregational accountability. He had been doing this for 30 years. He had sat in rooms like that one with other women in other moments of grief and asked the same questions from the same folder and believed with complete sincerity that what he was doing was protecting them. The organization had built the accountability mechanism into what it called care. Brother Caldwell was not the architect of that room. He was a product of it. The same as Thomas. The same as me. The same as Thomas. The same as me. I have had to learn to carry that. Both things at once. That the room was wrong and that the people in it believed they were right. Both things fit in the same windowless space under the same fluorescent light. I left in September. I have not been back to Allegheny General. I have not needed to. The first time I saw a doctor after leaving, a secular woman at a clinic in Shadyside, a woman with plants on the windowsill and a patience that didn't seem to have edges. She asked me about my medical history. I told her about the miscarriage. She listened without interrupting. She did not look at me with the particular pity that makes you feel worse than the thing you are describing. She just listened. When I finished, she asked, "Was there anything you needed that you weren't able to ask for at the time?" I sat in her office and I thought about the bathroom floor on Clearview Road. I thought about the gray Honda Civic. I thought about the Kleenex pre-placed on the table. I thought about a doctor in Allegheny General asking me a question and me asking one back and someone writing it down. I said yes. There were questions I was not allowed to ask. She said, "You can ask them now." I cried in her office. Not the quiet, invisible kind I had perfected over 7 years of marriage. The other kind. The kind that does not perform itself for anyone. She handed me a tissue from an ordinary box that had not been pre-placed by anyone. It was the most ordinary thing that had ever happened to me, and it was one of the best. If you are listening to me right now and you have sat in a room 11 days after losing something and been asked whether you wavered, if you have kept your face still while men with folders documented your grief, if you have bowed your head in prayer beside the people who just interrogated you because you did not yet know you were allowed to stand up and walk out, I see you. I see you on the bathroom floor. I see you in the passenger seat looking at the yellow lines. I see you keeping your face perfectly still because that is what you were trained to do and you were very good at it. And I want you to know something that took me a long time to know. The questions they asked you in that room were not about Jehovah. They were about a system that needed your compliance more than it needed your healing. Your grief was not a spiritual risk to be managed. It was yours. It was always only yours. You are allowed to ask the doctor questions. You are allowed to cry the other kind. You are allowed to sit in an office with plants on the windowsill and say, yes, there were questions I was not allowed to ask. And then ask them, all of them, for as long as you need. Your body was always yours, even in the worst week of your life, even on the bathroom floor. Even then,